Capite Velato. Let's start off by saying Barakata Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Capite Velato. And we're going to get into what that means. But this is a picture, I believe this is Augustus, Caesar Augustus. And this was a custom, a religious custom of the heathens. You know, when they went into, you know, their pagan temples to worship their gods, they had to have their head, the men had to have their head covered. Okay? This is a part of, you know, the customs of these other nations. And this is why the Apostle Paul mentioned that in 1 Corinthians 11. And we're going to start off at 1. Be ye followers of me, even as I also am of Yahushai. And the Apostle Paul did not go off. All of his letters were on point. Everything that he said was on point. And the spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai was with him. Yahushai chose him as a vessel to do his work, to build up the Israelite foreigners. Now I praise you, brethren, that you remember me in all things and keep the ordinances, meaning the laws. The ordinances, these are the orders that were given by the Apostle Paul, who was inspired by Yahushai, as I delivered them to you. But I would not have you ignorant that the head of every man is Yahushai, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Yahushai is the Most High. That is the order of things. These women think that they're, you know, that they're over the man, because this devil, the serpent, done, you know, got into their minds and made them to believe that they were equal to the man. Right? But that only works in movies. You have this feminist attitude that these women can beat men, because you see women on the screen kicking ass and all of that. Then they challenge a man because they get, you know, froggy, and they challenge a man in the ring. And I'm so glad that these men, when they get with these women in the ring that challenge them, they don't hold back. They put it to him. They put them things to him, you know. They start lumping them up. And then the bitch remembers, oh, I'm just a woman. I can't beat a man. Anyways, this is the point here. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. And the Sakari is guilty of that. You know, the two individuals, Chief Priest Alazar and Deacon Akar, they're responsible for pushing that out there, you know. And you have other Israelites from other Israelite groups that are doing the same exact thing, wearing baseball caps, covering their head when they're at the camp. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. Now let's get into this real quick, and then we'll come back to it. This is Capite Velato, right? Definition in Latin. There is a phrase, Capite Velato, meaning literally with covered head. Okay? I put this in the description box. And if you can't, you know, if it doesn't come up, because sometimes YouTube, if you put a foreign, you know, if it's not a YouTube link, they won't let it go through. And if it doesn't, just copy the title of the lesson and put it in Google, and it'll come up. Just go to this one, Capite Velato, right? In Latin, there is a phrase, Capite Velato, meaning literally with covered head. And this is something that the Romans were doing and the nations were doing. Here you got Augusto Capite Velato. This is, you know, the Emperor Augustus with the tradition or custom that the pagans worshipped or used when they worshipped their false gods. 1 DC, this is the year 1 after Yahushua, this in Spanish, DC Después de Cristo, which is AD Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. And it gives you the source where it's from. So, definition in Latin, there's a phrase, Capite Velato, meaning literally with covered head. The term is used in Roman religious context to refer to the act of covering the head with a veil when performing sacrifices. See? And I don't remember if it was Elder Yashawamba or the priest Yashalom from the New York camp, the English brother that sent me this info. I had it for a while, but I forgot about it, and somehow I ran across it again, and the Spirit just, I've been holding on to this for the last couple of days, been wanting to do a lesson on it, but, the Spirit wouldn't suffer me to go into it just yet, because now is the time. So we read that again. In Latin, there's a phrase, Capite Velato, meaning literally with covered head. The term is used in Roman religious context, not Israelite worship context, to refer to the act of covering the head with a veil when performing sacrifices. Same thing with a hat, anything that covers the head. Back then you had the Greeks that made Jake wear what? A hat. Why? Because that was in veneration to their god or gods. It's said that the Etruscans, by contrast, did things Greek style. An example, Capite Aperto. So the Etruscans, which are Japhet, not Edomites, the Japhetic people are dark-skinned people. So the Etruscans, right, who are dark-skinned people, the original inhabitants of so-called Europe and the Mediterranean Sea island, or the islands of the Mediterranean Sea. So the Etruscans, you could look it up. You could look up the Etruscans. You could look up the Minoans. You could look up the Picts. But especially the Etruscans and the Minoans, you're going to see artwork, and they look just like those Polynesian people. All right. So it says it's said that the Etruscans by contrast did things Greek style. An example, Capite Aperto, which means open covering. All right, or uncovered head, or with bare head. See, and this is how we're supposed to worship the Lord, with our heads uncovered. And the Apostle Paul mentioned that. And he said that you're not supposed to have your head covered as a man when you teach the word. This is part of it. A hat is part of it. It goes back to Greek customs. It goes back to Roman customs. It goes back to heathen worship of their gods. Practice. At the traditional public rituals of ancient Rome, and the Apostle Paul was very well learned in the Roman law and their customs, because he was brought up as a Roman. He was an Israelite who had Roman citizenship. Officials prayed, sacrificed, offered libations, drink offerings, and practiced augury, like they practice today, the presidents. Capite Velato, meaning with covered head. With the head covered by a fold of the toga drawn up from the back. Looks like a hoodie, right? Jake likes to wear hoodies. So you have these individuals that are Israelites. They'll have a baseball cap on, then they have the hoodie on, and then they're out there teaching. Supposed to be prophesying, whatever the case may be, with their heads covered. All right? It says this, and then they try to justify it by the law, where the Lord told Aaron not to uncover his head, or to mourn for his sons, because the Lord just killed them. That had nothing to do with the worship of the Lord and them covering their head, to worship the Lord. It says this covering of the head is a distinctive feature of Roman rite, in contrast with Etruscan practice, because the Etruscans did not cover their head. It says, or rituals, or ritus Gracchus, Greek rite. In Roman art, the covered head is a symbol of pietas and the individual's status as a pontifex, augur, or other priest. So when you cover your head when you're praying or prophesying, you're pretty much, doing it as a pagan custom. If you're doing it, you need to repent. Now, if you have your head covered and you're just speaking about different things, whatever, you're not speaking about the Lord, you ain't praying and prophesying, nothing like that, then you could wear a hat if you feel like it. But, if you're teaching, if you're prophesying, if you're praying, you should not have your head covered. Now, in contrast, the women have to have their head covered. Why? Because a woman's head is the man. She's supposed to be covered in honor and respect and shamefacedness of her husband, and complete submission to her husband. Practice prohibited by what? early Christians, the real ones. It has been argued that the Roman expression of piety, capite velato, influenced Paul's prohibition against Christians praying with covered heads. Yeah, it must have, because he knew Roman law. And he knew that the Romans would pray to their gods like that, and with their heads covered. That's why when he was teaching these Israelite foreigners who were influenced by the Roman and Greek culture, he told them, look, when you're praying to the Lord or you're prophesying, you don't have your head covered. Because obviously some of them were still doing that. Just like he told them, you should not have long hair. We don't have that type of custom here. Israelites don't have the custom of covering their head, or wearing the men covering their head, or wearing long hair. Any man who prays or prophesies with his head covered dishonors his head, and that's plain. Practice in historical literature, quoting Virgil from the Aeneid, he says, when in Epirus, the Trojan soothsayer prophesied to Aeneas that his final landing point would be on the beaches of Latium, he instructs him on arrival to turn his veiled head during the ceremony of thanks to the gods. So his head was covered, so that this gaze does not cross some face of foe, thus desecrating the ritual, right? Because that's how they would worship their gods. The pagans worship their gods by covering their heads. The men in Israel, when they're praying and prophesying, are not supposed to cover their head. You could take it, accept it or not, but that's what the scriptures say. You don't want to accept it, that's on you. So that his gaze does not cross some face. Okay, I read that part. Right, desecrating the ritual, because if they uncovered their head, they would be desecrating their God. Same thing with us. If we cover our head, then we're desecrating the Lord. Then it gives you the Latin, where it's written the Latin, and the 1910 English translation of this Latin writing here. Yea, even when the fleet has crossed the main, and from new altars built along the shore, thy vows to heaven are paid. Throw over thy head a purple mantle. See, cover your head. Capite velato. Throw over thy head a purple mantle, veiling well thy brows. These guys wear their fitted over their eyebrows. Least while the sacrificial fire ascends in offering to the gods, thine eye behold some face of foe, and every omen fail. See, because there was a certain custom or tradition that they held, or that they kept with, their head covered, the men, in veneration of what? Their pagan gods. So the Apostle Paul said, don't do that. 1 Corinthians 11:4. Every man that praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. Matter of fact, you know what? I am interested now. Let's go to the Latin. Let's see what it says in the Latin. Oh, here, look. Any man praying prophetans, that's prophesy, velato capite, with his head covered. De turpat carput sum. So he dishonors his head. Oh, Lord. Man, oh man. So let's see, with his head covered, dishonoreth. The word for dishonoreth is katahiskuno. Katahiskuno. To dishonor, disgrace, to put to shame. When you cover your head, we don't have those type of customs. You're not supposed to cover your head when you're praying or prophesying. Make ashamed, to be ashamed, blush with shame. One is said to be put to shame who suffers a repulse or whom some hope has deceived. All right, so you're not supposed to cover your head when you're praying or prophesying. So let's read that again. Every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head. But every woman that prayeth or prophesieth with her head uncovered. What does it mean, prophesieth? It means that she has a vision, and she tells her husband or her father, about that vision. Or the father may say, well, look, you could go ahead and say, say this vision that you had. And she may just repeat under her father's orders this, thing or this vision that she just had. And she would have to have her head covered. Because if it's uncovered, dishonoreth her head, for that is even all one as if she was shaven, meaning she had no, her hair was shaved bald. Let's go 7th verse. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head. Not to cover his head. Matter of fact, I bet you it should say the same thing in the Vulgate. Velare caput. Cover head. Come on, man. Capite Velato. For a man indeed ought to, I know Apostle Gabar is going to get a kick out of this. You know, he likes the Latin. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for as much as he is the image and glory of the Most High. So when you cover in your head, when you praying or prophesying, you dishonor the Father, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, but the woman is the glory of the man. All right, and that's the main point. So you're not supposed to cover your head. Capite Velato. You know, with covered head, that's how the nations worship their gods. We're not supposed to do after the manner of the nations. Matter of fact, let me leave you with this one precept in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 10, and verse 1 and 2. Hear ye the word which the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai speaketh unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, learn not the way of the heathen. And it means what it means. It means what it says. Do not learn the way of the heathen. Capite Velato, or with covered head, is a custom of the nations. You should not have your head covered, your men, when praying or prophesying. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.